Welcome to Game and Grains, the whiskey gaming channel. I'm your player one, Richard. And last week was my birthday. So I did what any perfectly normal, sane individual would do and drove 4 hours to stand in line for an hour in the hopes to get a really cool bottle from Jack Daniels. And I also picked up a couple of other bottles along the way. So I'm going to tell you about that experience as well as share my birthday whiskey haul with you. So grab your controllers, pour yourself a dram, and let's get into it. Now, as I mentioned before, last week was my birthday, and I made the decision to do something for myself, and that was to simply take the day off. Now, I made that choice about a week or two prior, and I intentionally left the door wide open to do what I wanted when I wanted. So, fast forward to last Monday when Jack Daniels made a special announcement. They said that they were going to release 5 different special reserve ryes at the distillery, 2 from Coy Hill, 2 from Broiler Hill, and 1 from Fire Brigade Fields. Well, I had never been to Jack Daniels before, and I had never attended a bottle drop at a distillery. So I made the choice then and there that I was going to spend my day on my birthday at Jack Daniels Distillery. So when the day finally came, I woke up well before the sun rose, drove 4 hours to Lynchburg, Tennessee, and stood in line at Jack Daniels Distillery to get my hands on those 5 special reserve bottles. Now, before I go digging into this bag, I want to share with you about what's in these bags. Now, as I mentioned before, it is a 4-hour trip for me one way. So once I was done in Lynchburg, I had plenty of time on the way home to do some bourbon hunting, and I stopped in several different stores. Now, the first store that I stopped in had me extra excited because once you walk through those doors, it was a whiskey enthusiast dream. Just wall to wall whiskey everywhere. They had things from Hard Truth, they had Weller 107, Southern Selective, 13 Colonies Cask Strength, just anything and everything that you would want available there. And what made it even better was that the staff was incredibly knowledgeable about everything. They immediately greeted me, asked me what I was looking for, asked me what I liked, and were able to point me in different directions of things that I should try. Now, the first thing that I picked up from that store was one that I said I would probably never get again, at least not this type of bottle, and that is a store pick Jack Daniels rye. Now, it's very fitting because that's what I went down to Lynchburg for. Now, they allowed me to sample this in the store, and I was a little hesitant because I was like, it's probably going to taste the same as other ones do. No, this one is your standard Jack Daniels rye, but so much sweeter. And so when I was talking to the employees, I was like, what makes this stand out? And they said that this particular barrel came from Tanyard Hill. So I knew immediately that I was going to have to pick this one up, and I'm glad that I did. Now, the next bottle that I picked up from them was one that I got to try a few weeks ago from my good friend Ernest Peacock. Now, he is a American single malt fan, and so he brought this bottle here. Now, this is called the Beverly from the Quintessential Collection. Now, the Quintessential lineup comes from Cedar Ridge Distilling out of Iowa. Now, they make things like bourbons and stuff like that, but what has my interest is going to be these single malts. Now, this one is finished in a sherry and French oak barrels. It has a proof point of 116.9, and when I tried this the other day, it was just absolutely amazing. Those traditional chocolate notes that you would get from an American single malt, but so much sweeter because of that sherry cask that it was finished in. Now, if you happen to be in the Spring Hill area, which is just, I think, about an hour away from Lynchburg, I highly encourage you to stop by and just take a look. Now, the next thing that we're going to take a look at is going to be from the second store that I stopped in. Now, I did film at this store. In fact, the other 3 stores that I stopped in, I did make bourbon hunt videos. And the first one is going to be from C&C Wine and Liquors, located in Jackson, Tennessee. Now, if you watch any of my hunt videos, then I've featured this particular bottle on several occasions and never really picked it up. But I decided to pull the trigger on this one, and that is the 13 Colonies maple straight bourbon whiskey finished in maple wood spirals. I'll get it out in just a second. This is one that has just been on my list for quite some time. I like their standard offerings. I really love their cask strength, and this is one that I've just been wishy-washy about. Now, C&C Wine and Liquors, as I mentioned before, is located in Jackson, Tennessee. It is a really cool store too. They have, I think, 3 different offerings of good times, and I was really wanting to get one of those. They had a creamsicle, a Neapolitan, and a banana split, all of which sounded interesting to me. They had, I think, an Australian one called, what was it called? Obtainium, I think. That was also one that intrigued me. It had a high proof point, and a high age statement. I thought about pulling the trigger on that, but I just decided to get this one. So moving right along, the next store that I stopped at was called Party Mart, also located in Jackson, Tennessee. Now, these C&C Liquor and Wine and Liquor and Party Mart are stores that are often frequented by our friend Chad over at A Little Old Fashioned. And so I had to go in there and take a look. Now, they had tons of allocated bottles there. E.H. Taylor single barrels. They had E.H. Taylor straight ryes. I saw a Old Forester birthday blend, just tons of allocated stuff. But I didn't pick up any allocated bottles there. Instead, I picked up the Evan Williams 250th anniversary or celebratory bottle. Now, this one was about $40. I think MSRP is like $35.99. But I was really excited to pick up this one because I know a lot of people are actually out looking for it. Now, what's really cool about this one is the proof point that is on it, which is 117.76 proof. So how cool is that? That they are honoring the United States 250th birthday by a 1776 proof point on this bottle. Now, we're almost to the end before I tell you a little bit more about my experience at Jack Daniel's. The last store that I went into was a little bit farther down the road, I think about another hour away, maybe a little bit less, in Humboldt, Tennessee. And this bottle that I picked up, I was quite surprised after I had filmed about the price. Now, as soon as you walk in the door of Robert's package store in Humboldt, Tennessee, you go to the whiskey section and you have all these allocated bottles. Well, right there up front were, I think, 2 opened cases and 2 closed cases of Stag. This happens to be 25B, I believe, at 126.9 proof. And what really caught my attention with this was the price. $89.99 for this bottle. Now, I had to ask the gentleman several times, and he probably thought I just was stupid or something because I couldn't believe that it was that cheap of a bottle. So they still had plenty that were there when I left last week, just sitting there, as well as tons of other allocated items. And they said that they don't really mark up their prices very much. So I will definitely be going back there. But again, that was very similar to the Elixir Spirits. It was just a whiskey enthusiast dream to go in there and shop. Tons of things that were a little bit older, that are hard to find, just really cool bottles everywhere. So that was the from Robert's package store. So it doesn't look like a lot, but it really is. I mean, that's 5 bottles that I picked up on a trip that I really hadn't planned on picking up. Now, enough about that. Let's talk about what I actually got while I was in Lynchburg. So I told you that I drove 4 hours to get there and I woke up before the sun rose. Well, I know that the gate had opened at 9. Well, previously they had already done drops every day, and I believe they said they were going to continue until they were sold out, what have you. Well, I timed it where I would get there right when the doors open, 9 a.m. 9 a.m. rolls around. I park in the parking lot at 8:58. I'm in line at 9. Turns out they had opened the doors at 8:30. People were already going through and grabbing those bottles. Now you had the option to buy a case, which had all 5 of them already in there, or you could buy them individually. It was told to me once I got there that they only had 100 sets of those 5 bottles. Everything else was extra. I'd also heard that after they had sold through everything, that they were also dropping special bottles. Like someone had told me they dropped a Jack Daniel's 10-year batch 2. I had also heard from the gentleman that I spoke to that was in front of me that they had the 10, 12, and 14 year of this year that they had released after the fact. So I thought, well, if I don't get a rye, then at least I'll get something cool. So the line is slowly moving, and we're starting to hear rumblings that they're getting low on their inventory. So I'm still optimistic that I'm going to get my hands on something. So as we move through the lines, I finally make it into the courtyard. I can see the entrance to the store over to my left. As I round the bend, as the line slowly moves, an employee walks out and says, "Unfortunately, we have sold out of all of our reserve ryes." Man, that was a punch to the gut. But I was still optimistic that they had some of those other really cool bottles in there. So, and they were doing something, I guess, for Tennessee Squires that was called the Wooter, I believe is how you pronounce that. So anyway, I make it into the actual store. I'm really hoping to find something cool. Man, they didn't have nothing. Now you could buy one of those Wooter bottles, which was just a Gentleman Jack bottle that on the back they had etched whatever this monster was that is the symbol for this event. I didn't want a bottle of Gentleman Jack. I came there to get something special. Well, I did walk away with a rye. And it is this guy. It is the Jack Daniel's Tennessee Straight Rye Whiskey. Now, I know this is nothing to be super excited about, but they did have a sign above the bottle saying that this is no longer being made. So I was like, well, crap. At least I'm going to walk out of there with a rye. Now, I'm also slowly building up my collection of Glens, so I did pick up a Glen from there as well. Now, my trip to Lynchburg was not a complete bust because I also stopped by another distillery that's there, which is called Company. I believe their master distiller was formerly the master distiller of Jack Daniel's. And so that was a really cool experience going in there and sitting at the tasting bar. I did go through all of their offerings, and my favorite happened to be I think it's called the Seismic Rye, which I believe was like their special edition rye. It was really, really good. Sweet notes with some earthiness to it, a little bit of rye spice. I'll probably pick up a bottle at some point in time in the future. But, all right, guys. Well, this is my birthday whiskey haul. And even though I didn't get those special reserve rye bottles, I did walk away with some really cool stuff. A really good Jack Daniel's rye. They stag for a heck of a good price. A bottle that I had been wanting to get for quite some time, or at least since having tried it. Another bottle that has been on my list for a while, and this one that celebrates our 250th anniversary as a country. So, all right, guys. Well, I know that was a bit of a longer video. We didn't really do a review, but I wanted to share with you just some of the cool things that I picked up on my trip. So, as always, I'm your favorite player, One Richard. Thanks for watching. Have a good one.